Hey guys, Natalia here, an English-speaking tour guide, interpreter, translator, a teacher, and an English-speaking narrator. And today I'm going to share with you another story, and this is a story behind one of Kiev's buildings. Right now I'm standing in Kiev's oldest neighborhood, the neighborhood of Podil. And in fact, this neighborhood is solid packed with buildings which date back to the 18th, 19th and early 20th century. So it's known for its old architecture. But today I'm going to zoom on in one building, and this building is just right behind me. It's behind me, and it's a very imposing building. It's a two-story building. It's made of brick, and it dates back to 1910. This is when it was built. And you know what, at the time, the oldest neighborhood of Podil, where it is located, it was actually very heavily populated by Jews. It was pretty much a Jewish neighborhood. And you know, this street that I'm standing in is actually was very heavily populated by Jews. And the thing is that this whole area is was part of a very large area called the Pale of Settlement. The Pale of Settlement is a norm which was introduced by the Empress Catherine the Great of Russia in the last quarter of the 18th century, and it was actually designed to keep the Jewish population, and more specifically Jewish businessmen, at bay, just to put them at a disadvantage. Because you know what, in the 17th, as early as the 17th century, the Russian Empire annexed large territories of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which were very densely populated by Jews. And that's why, well, actually, this is how the Jewish population actually ended up in the Russian Empire. And well, and you know what, the Russian businessmen began complaining to the authorities that the Jewish businessmen actually were using their close ties and close connections and networks in Eastern and Western Europe and Central Europe in their international commercial transactions. And well, just to keep the Jews well, at a disadvantage, to put them at a disadvantage, it was decided to establish the Pale of Settlement. The Jews, what does it mean? It meant that the Jewish population was not allowed to settle or live either temporarily or permanently beyond the Pale of Settlement. And the street I'm standing in right now actually was part of that Pale of Settlement. Well, and in fact, this is where the largest number of Jews got permission to live in Kiev. And this street at the time was known for its multiple charitable facilities and institutions. Well, there were public canteens, cheap canteens for Jews, dining halls, bath houses, shelters, and even and schools, of course, and child care centers. And in fact, the building that I'm going to to explain to you today was actually one such child Care Center. You can see that it's a two-story building. It's a two-story building, and it's definitely a very good example of classicist architecture. You can see triangular pediment at the top of the building and ionic columns on the second floor. So as I said, it was built in 1910 at the expense of Margarita Goldsmith-Brodska, the daughter of a very famous and very wealthy citizen of Kiev, Lazar Brodsky. Lazar Brodsky was a very outstanding personality. He was a sugar magnate. His family and his team controlled a fourth of sugar production in the Russian Empire, and he actually was one of the richest people in Ukraine. And he was known for his philanthropism. He was a very well-known philanthropist and patron of arts. Just to give an example, he actually sponsored the construction. He was one of those who sponsored the construction of Kiev Polytechnical Institute, the largest Kiev synagogue, and a hospital, and even and other charitable facilities, and not only charitable but educational and healthcare facilities. So I think that his daughter just tried to follow in his footsteps when she decided to sponsor the construction of this child care center. It was designed to provide services for poor working Jewish families who had children and who couldn't afford to look after them in the daytime. So it was this building was designed for 100 girls aged between 6 and 13 years. It had spacious classrooms, a big dining hall, and at the back of the building there was a playground, a very large playground where the girls in the warm season, weather permitting, could play under the supervision of their teachers, of course. Now, of course, as I said, the Jewish population of Kiev was kind of fond of just providing funds, money for various charitable facilities. But you know what? Those times are long gone, because as we all know only too well, starting from the 1970s and during the following about 20 years, Jews of the Soviet Union left the country, and in total about 1.6 million Jews left the Soviet Union and post-Soviet countries within a short space of 20 years. And actually, and this street actually, a very Jewish street, actually has preserved its outlook, its appearance, because a large number of its buildings have survived the test of time. All these buildings around me, which stand within walking distance of this child care center, actually date back to the late 19th and early 20th century. Of course, a lot of them are in poor shape, but still the street looks pretty much the way it looked at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, I'd like you to have a look at a very beautiful building which I passed by today, and I couldn't tear my eyes off it. It's a church. It's a church, and in fact, this is an old church. It was built in 1885 in times of the Russian Empire, but in 1936 it was ruthlessly pulled down by the Bolsheviks as part of their anti-religious campaign. And you know what, in 2006 Kiev mayor decided to restore this church, and you can see this imposing building, just a minute, in the distance. You can see it's clearly a Byzantine style church. It was rebuilt about 12 years ago, and it's named, well, it bears the name Presentation of the Virgin Mary in the Temple Church. You can see that the domes of this church are topped by Greek crosses, which is reminiscent of the Byzantine churches. And we all know only too well that the prime example of Byzantine architecture is the famous Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, which is present-day Istanbul. And now I'd like you to show one more building which actually stands next door to this one. Well, this is the building I want to show you in more detail. The thing is that this building reminds me of a very peculiar incident which happened 40 plus years ago, when I was a student of Kiev State Pedagogical Institute for Foreign Languages. And you know, just 40 years ago, I recall strolling down this street past this building, and I was actually, it was not a leisurely walk, no, far from it. I was on a mission, on a very important mission, escorting a group of young British students who came to my university under a student exchange program. Well, it was not for nothing that I was assigned this task. It was no accident, because to do that I had to pass a very rigorous interview at my institute Komsomol unit, and the interview in itself was very funny, and maybe one day I will share the details, but let's get back to our story. Another thing which actually helped me was that I could speak more or less decent English, which was actually very unusual, because in Soviet times we, soon to be English language teachers and linguists, had very little exposure to original, authentic English books, English literature, and up-to-date educational materials which were produced in Britain, the US and other English-speaking countries. The manuals and textbooks which we used were mostly, maybe not, well, most of them, maybe a lion's share of them, were produced by Soviet philologists, linguists and teachers. So I could speak decent English, and that's how choice fell on me. And the first thing that I thought that that came to my mind. The first thing was to bring my my students to Kiev's oldest neighborhood of Podil, because I knew full well, well-known popular belief that you can't get a real taste of Kiev unless you've seen the neighborhood of Podil. So as we were walking past this building, just past this building, an elderly woman appeared on the doorstep, and she looked quite old, but it was not the her old age that stood out to us, but rather the way she was dressed. Her clothes looked so shabby and so weathered that each one of us shuddered, involuntarily shuddered. And you know, one of these women students in our tourist group asked me if she could take a photo of that old woman. Yes, she was standing right here on the doorstep right behind me, where I'm standing now. And so one British woman student asked me if she could take a photo of that elderly woman. And you know what? I gave permission, which, by the way, I have regretted doing ever since. It was not for me to decide on behalf of that woman if a photo of her could have been taken. So I think that it was very rude. Now I think that it was very rude and uncivil of me. But you know what? And I think that elderly woman actually, in a way, in some ways, reminded me of my grandmother, who, this is what I'm thinking now, this is what I understand now. My grandmother, who raised me and actually supported me throughout all my student years, on her meager Soviet pension of 45 Soviet rubles. And to tell you the truth, Soviet pensions were not high. Well, the average Soviet pension was about 70 Soviet rubles, which comes to about 120 US dollars. But mind you, the dollar was quite strong at the time. And the average Soviet salary, by the way, was about 150 Soviet rubles, which comes around to probably 240 American dollars. Well, and as I said, to be able to perform this task, I had to pass a very rigorous interview at my university, at the Komsomol unit. And you know, what does Komsomol stand for? Komsomol is an abbreviation which stands for the All-Union Leninist Communist League of Youth. And Komsomol was seen as a very energetic implementer of the Communist Party plans and programs. Well, actually, I was a Komsomol member myself, by the way. It was the general rule. At the age of about, I don't know, 14, each one of us had to join the ranks of the Komsomol organization. Now, guys, I kind of I can't tell you what the average Ukrainian pension is now, but it occurred to me that right in this building houses that I've been showing you, houses the Kiev Region Pension Fund of Ukraine, right behind me, behind this gate. So what I suggest is to try this door and maybe ask I'll try to ask the employees of the pension fund what actually the average Ukrainian pension is now. Let me try the door. So here we are. Just a minute. It's open. It's open. So let's go inside. Let's go inside and have a look. As you can see, it's a very old building, quite shabby, and I think that these walls speak for themselves. You know, these walls which are completely and utterly covered with these graffiti. But I think that I'm a bit late. I'm a bit too late because the building is locked. I think that door is locked now, and so we can't go inside. So better luck next time. Okay, so I think this is it for this episode, for this video. And if you've enjoyed my video, please hit the subscribe button and just like my video. And if you really love my videos, please donate any amount of money you think appropriate to help me continue making such videos, and of course my podcast titled Natalia Stages Ukraine, which actually is dedicated to these troubled times when Ukraine is going through this war which was unleashed by Russia, and where I describe in great detail the hardships faced by the Ukrainian people, and with a particular emphasis on culture, Ukraine's culture and social life. Okay, so have a nice day. Bye.